Hello, my Lynn N Things family and friends. Welcome back to the channel, guys. It's Saturday, and you know what that means. It is story time with Lynn, guys. So this is one of the new things that I have put on my channel because I read or am reading. Well, I've read it already, but I'm reading it to you guys. The Cicely Tyson story, Just As I Am. We have been just reading through this book and hearing a lot about her story and about her life and just her life accomplishments and life experiences, and we have just been awed at every turn. So I just want you guys to go ahead, get nice and comfy, honey. Get your drink. I'm sitting here drinking or trying this new bubble tea, and this was at my local grocer. I love a milk tea with the boba in it. This one I never had. This is brown sugar flavored milk tea, and I have purchased the box from Trader Joe's, and I really love it, and I mix it, and I'm sure I got a video where I make that drink, and if I can find it, I'll probably put it in the iCard in this video. But this one is just already made. I just wanted to try it. It's okay. It's not the best, but it's okay, you know. So I'll be sipping on that if I need a drink while I'm reading. And then y'all know we have to set the ambiance. So come on in, my subbies. Thank you so much for all of you guys who have been with me from the very beginning, for you who came to in the middle, and for you who are subscribing right now or just came to the channel. I'm Lynn, and usually you'll be seeing some Dollar Tree things from me, like Dollar Tree walkthroughs, Dollar Tree hauls, Dollar Tree reviews, you know, what I think of the products that I purchased and how I use them in my home. And also you'll see decor when I set up, like, we know Christmas is around the corner, so Grinch is on his way, y'all. Grinchmas is on his way. I do have a video coming up for you guys showing some beautiful friend mail, and like we're gonna go over and see what do I have Grinch, so that I can start kind of pulling that stuff out, y'all. And then also, I have not forgot, I'm back from vacation and kind of settling down, but yes, y'all, it's almost time again for another Dollar Tree bingo. I have not forgot. I totally have so much fun with you guys with the Dollar Tree bingo, so I cannot wait to do another one of those. I'm thinking about next weekend, so I'm hoping you guys are free. I think we did it on a Saturday the last time we did it. I think it worked out pretty good. I got a lot of you guys to come because you guys know that is live. So you get to be here live with me, y'all, on Dollar Tree Bingo night. So I'm hoping, like I said, that I'm able to do that next Saturday. So I hope you guys are free to meet me here. It's usually around 6:30-ish when I do it. I believe Central Time. So let's get started. Y'all already know we have to set the ambiance, and I love to light a candle. So I did pick up a couple of the candles from Dollar Tree. Y'all, I just thought this was so nice. Y'all let me know if y'all found these in your Dollar Trees yet, y'all. So I'm going to be lighting the lemon verbena. It smells so good on coal, y'all. It really does. I cannot wait to see what it smells like burning. Look at that. So we're just going to light our candle. Got that thing all pretty and lit, and we're going to sit that to the side. And guys, we are now on chapter 18, y'all. 18. Wow. So this book is almost over, y'all. Look, it's almost over. We still got some more chapters to go. I hope you have been enjoying each and every one of the chapters. Oh, and please know I'm not reading every single page, just some highlights and things that I kind of want you guys to hear. So, you know, if you would like to read the whole book in its entirety, please find out where you can get it. You probably can get it on Amazon. I don't know about your local bookstores, but it is a great book to have in your collection if you like memoirs, biographies, and things like that. This is a definite keeper. So we, like I say, are on chapter 18, and the title of this is Roots. So we're going to jump right into chapter 18, guys. And don't forget, go ahead, get comfortable. If you're playing me in the background while you're doing some housework or at work or driving to work, and you're playing this, you know, through your stereo, however you enjoying this story time, feel free to do that. Here we go. Everywhere in the world I go, folks still come up to me, palms over their hearts, and whisper, Roots. Though I've played more than 100 roles in my time, many of which have fallen from memory, millions will forever know me as Benta. mother of Kunta Kinte, the Gambian man at the center of Alex Haley's epic saga Roots. Over 8 nights in the winter of 1977, the nation sat in rapt attention as the story of Haley's ancestry, starting with Kinte's birth and winding its way through 2 continents and 7 generations, unfolded on their televisions. It's a testament to God's handiwork that Roots came to include my portrayal. The book preceded the miniseries, but only by a few months. In the fall of 1976, before the film had aired in January 1977, Alex Haley's Roots, the Saga of an American Family, debuted to critical and commercial fanfare, ultimately spending 46 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, 22 of them at number 1. And earning Haley a Pulitzer Prize, a National Book Award special citation. The book went on to sell 6 million copies. But what happened to be an overnight success had actually spanned more than a decade. Haley, who'd merited acclaim for his 1965 collaboration of the autobiography of Malcolm X, became curious about his own ancestry. In his family's rich oral tradition, Haley's grandmother had passed along stories of their ancestor, Kunta Kinte, a young Muslim man who had been enslaved during his teen years and shipped to America during the treacherous 4-long Middle Passage. Family lore told that Kinte obstinately refused to trade his given name for Toby, the one forced upon him by his new masters. Haley followed that trail to the shores of West Africa, where, armed only with this oral history and the name Kunta Kinte, portrayed in his younger years in the film by LeVar Burton, he began tracing his family's lineage with the help of a Gambian griot, or a storyteller. That search, over 12 long years, y'all, gave birth to Roots. I met Alex Haley soon after this book had been published. As his history gripped readers around the nation and world, he began hosting forums, town hall gatherings much like those I'd participated in after the release of Sounder. I took part in a few of his forums, which is how he and I first became acquainted. I adored him from the first meeting. When our rich conversations weaved and bobbed through the story of how his book came to be, when I find someone who stimulates me intellectually, as he did, that person can never get rid of me. What an extraordinary human being Alex Haley was, both soft-spoken and humble. Over the years of our friendship, and these days, I can hardly recall a time when he wasn't in my life. He rarely raised his voice above a whisper. Few would have guessed that the gale winds unleashed by Malcolm X and Roots flowed from such an even-tempered soul. Like many talented artists, he let his pen do the picketing. God began preparing me for Roots years before the series was even a thought. I had traveled to Africa for the first time in 1967, to the kingdom of Dahomey, tucked between Togo and Nigeria in present-day Benin. My work on The Comedians, a film co-starring Liz Taylor and Richard Burton, is what took me there. The story was set in Haiti, but because of political conflict there, the film was shot in Dahomey. The movie was a forgettable flop, but the vivid colors, aromas, and sounds Africa still dance in my memory. Away from filming, I had traveled the country with a translator, talking to women who gathered at the shoreline to wash their clothes, witnessing the rich community and uproarious laughter around supper tables, relishing the vibrant colors, flavors of maize, yams, and peanut stew served from their wooden tables. I did not speak their language, but I knew these women, the abiding care that knits together the African American community, that profound intuitiveness and palpable spirituality that has always been within us. It is present in Mother Africa, In truth, it originated there. A few years later, I returned to Africa, this time as part of a tour with the United Nations. On our journey to the remote villages of Senegal, I had the privilege of being present alongside an impoverished woman as she gave birth in a makeshift ward on the springs of a tattered iron bed with a thin sheet draped over her. She'd lost a baby during childbirth the year before. I was asked to come see her as a way to ease the anxiety that might clasp shut one's womb following such a tragedy. Between her fluent French and my broken version, we greeted each other as I took a seat near her. She was sweating profusely in a sweltering room with no air conditioner or a fan. I pulled out a packet of wipes from my pocketbook and wiped her forehead. She commented on the scent of its perfume. I smiled and nodded and then folded her into mine. I told the few only corny French jokes that I knew, attempting to try to distract her from the labor pains. Never once did she scream or cry, not a single sound. And I kept thinking, they gave her something. But the nurse said she hadn't had an epidural or any of the other anesthetics that we take for granted in the United States. Other than sweat, I could hardly even tell this woman was having a child. Next thing I knew, the nurse was shouting, "I see a head." As doctors directed the woman to push, there wasn't an ounce of strain on her face. Moments later, her baby boy, swaddled and wailing, lay pressed against her bosom. Little did I know that I'd one day be called upon to portray the birthing experience of an African woman. On the first day of filming, I'd asked the director, "Do you want a silent birth?" I told him about the one that I had witnessed in Senegal. The director, it turned out, wanted a conventional labor, complete with the moaning and the screaming, and I gave him precisely what he requested. Benta's birthing scene opens the film, just as it does the book, wrote Haley. Early in the spring of 1750, in the village of Jufur, 4 days upriver from the coast of the Gambian West African, a man-child was born to Omoro and Bente Kente. Forcing forth from Bente's strong young body, he was black as she was, flecked and slippery with Bente's blood, and he was bawling. Maya Angelou, the Almighty, who played my mother, Nayo Boto, joined me in moving that passage from page to screen on our film set in Savannah, Georgia, a location chosen in part because the vegetation there kind of resembles that of Gambia. My character during that scene served as a slave. My character during that scene served as my salve. What a blessing it was just to fold myself into Benta, to forget my mourning for a time. My mother by then had been gone for 2 years. But the ache lingered. Stepping into Benta's labor was how I divorced myself from my own grief. Benta's birthing scene was of course imaginary. There I lay, legs open, with the sheet pulled over my lower half and the camera aimed only at the agony on my face. And yet that anguish behind those primal wails could not have been more real. Benta, for me, was more than a character. She was my catharsis. As my newborn makes his grand entrance, my mother stands proudly at my rear, wiping sweat from my brow. My husband, Omoro, played by Thomas Rosalu, dashes into the villa upon hearing the first cries of our son. Roots felt like a gamble for ABC. The executives had a gripping historical drama on their hands, based on a book that had already riveted the masses. That much they knew. But above that certainty hung a pair of questions. Would white folks tune in for a generational slave narrative featuring a mostly black cast? And if they did tune in, would they turn away in guilt or denial or grief over their foreparents' savage treatment of blacks? Perhaps with those questions in mind, the series writers created a white slave captain with a moral compass. Thomas Davies, portrayed by Ed Asner, such a sympathetic character, did not appear in Haley's volume. His inclusion would make the plot line more palatable for Caucasians, or so went their thinking. Still, even after the storyline had been softened, there was a whole lot of hand-wringing leading up to airtime. To increase the series' chance of success, ABC had filled the cast with a slew of familiar black faces like John Amos, O.J. Simpson, and Louis Gossett Jr. Ahead of Roots' release in January 1977, the studio screened all 8 hours of the series for a mostly white Los Angeles audience. The theater was jammed to the rafters. I was in attendance when the film ended. You could have heard a hair hit the floor. No one moved or said a word for several minutes. The final episode, which aired on January 30th, 1977, catapulted Roots into the record books. That episode at the time was the most watched one in television history. Even now, it is still the 5th most watched non-Super Bowl show of all time. Roots was eventually bested only by the last episode of MASH in 1983, the final episode of Cheers in 93, and the final Whodunit episode of Dallas in 1980. Roots' ratings were eclipsed only by its cultural impact. As I see it, Roots resonated because it touched a nerve that runs far deeper than race, family identity. The human desire to know where we've come from and who our foreparents were is a universal longing that transcends ethnicity. When you know your history, you know your value. You know the price that has been paid for you to be here. You recognize what those who came before you built and sacrificed for you to inhabit the space in which you dwell. In sharing the story of his one tribe, Haley precipitated a curiosity and a question for millions. What is my own family history? Like never before, people of all backgrounds began researching their ancestries, wondering how their pasts had given birth to their present lives. Looking into one's heritage became, and still is, a national fascination. Judging by the scores of folks who approached me with tears in their eyes as they spoke of the series, I felt like I had been part of educating the entire world. Decades before I portrayed Benta, I had longed to discover more about my own ancestry. Roots deepened that yearning. I knew the few stories my mother and father had passed on to me, the tales of resilience and survival that I had recounted in these pages, but sadly I never met any of my grandparents in Nevis. Never had the opportunity to ask them about their lives or of their parents or grandparents. For African Americans in particular, genealogical research can be frustrating, with dead ends around every corner. Records don't often exist for the enslaved, who, when they were even counted, were frequently numbered as cattle rather than human. When our ancestors were sold away from their homelands, their voices were silenced beneath the crack of their masters' whips. That is why it is so meaningful when we manage, through documentation, to unearth even the tiniest breadcrumbs of our past. Knowing your generational story firms the ground upon which you stand. It makes your life, your struggles, and triumphs bigger than your lone existence. It connects you to a grand plot line. Perhaps Roots' most enduring legacy is that it sparked a conversation around two powerful questions. How will we, as a nation of immigrants, heal the wounds of our painful history? And what personal responsibility does each of us bear in attempting to do so. Miles had a way of showing up in my world each time my career reached a new pinnacle. He'd done so after the success of Sounder. On that day, he crawled his stone self into my hotel room, pleading for my hand in marriage. He'd done so again following Jane Pittman. When the question over his whereabouts made its way to me, then in 1978, while still basking in Roots' afterglow, I played the formidable abolitionist and Underground Railroad conductor Harriet Tubman in the NBC miniseries A Woman Called Moses, a role that on the heels of Rebecca, Jane Pittman, Coretta, and Benta fulfilled my mission of portraying the best of who we are as black women. While I was completing work on that series over the summer, Miles showed up once more. He again had his hand on death's doorknob. I was in California when Miles called. In the months leading up to our reconnection, I'd taken 2 significant wellness strides, both of which helped me restore my balance after losing my mom. Sometime in 1976, I went to a health spa where patrons were served only whole organic foods, all fruits and vegetables and natural grains, no animal products. When I left there after a week of following that program, the world looked different to me. My head was clear, colors and smells and sounds felt more pronounced, my memory improved, I felt energized. So, on my own at home, I continued eating that way. I'd begin the day with a cup of fresh celery juice before any solid food as a way to cleanse my system, followed by a serving of oatmeal. I enjoyed mine whipped in a blender like a souffle, and fruit. For lunch and dinner, I'd make myself some collards and yams, or else I'd fill an enormous wooden salad bowl with every vegetable in the rainbow, topping it off with lentils. Sometimes I'd just climb up into bed with that bowl and eat my veggies raw, no dressing to speak of. I eat that way now, 4 decades later. And these days, I also sometimes have fish and egg whites. The change has agreed with me. It seems at age 96, I'm still kicking. Miles was sober when he rang me. I don't know to what degree he was still using cocaine then, if at all. But the damage he had inflicted on his body over so many years was clear. His kidneys were shutting down, he told me. His lungs were in horrible shape. He was coughing all the time and could hardly stand up straight. He had trouble keeping any food down. I'm tired of living like this, sis, he said, wheezing as he spoke. I don't want to do this no more. Please come back to me. I need you. I said nothing at first. Every cell in my body screamed for me to put down that receiver, to just walk away from this man who'd caused me so much aggravation. And yet, I could not turn away. From the day Miles and I had first connected in Riverside Park all those years earlier, I felt a profound pull toward him, an attraction that runs counter to logic and leans toward mystery. I knew about the drugs. I'd heard the stories of his philandering, and during my first time around with Miles, I had experienced the grief of it. Folks were always wondering aloud how the two of us, a church girl and a drug addict, could ever possibly fit together. They couldn't understand why I was so drawn to him. And in my quiet moments, even I sometimes questioned that. What was dim to me then, at age 53, I see more clearly now. Miles felt desperate for someone to save him from himself. Someone who wanted nothing to do with drugs destroying him. He yearned for someone he could trust to climb down into the gutter and pull him out, while never succumbing to the forces that lured him there. I took Miles to see a Dr. Chen, a Chinese herbalist that I had heard about. A woman in the business, an actress I won't name, had gone to see Dr. Chen when she was suffering with a major physical ailment. Weeks later, after following his treatment plan, she left his office in tears of gratitude because he had been able to cure her. I'd once overheard this woman's secretary mention that story and Dr. Shen, and I wrote down his name and address, which were on Baynard Street in Chinatown. I found Dr. Shen's number and I called him about Miles. Bring him here, he told me. When we entered his office on a Sunday morning, the waiting room was packed. Dr. Shen called for Miles and I went in with him. In silence, the doctor took Miles's pulse and blood pressure. He then checked his eyes, listened to his heart, his lungs, and laid him on an exam table. He pressed on his abdomen, asking him if he felt any soreness. Miles's groan provided that answer. As Miles sat up on the side of the table, the doctor drew in a deep breath. You might have 2, maybe 3 weeks left in you, he said. Miles stared at him blankly, the blood draining from his face as he absorbed a sentence neither of us had expected to hear. No one spoke for a full minute. Let's step outside, I finally said to Miles in the hall. I asked him whether I could talk to Dr. Shen alone to hear the details of his full assessment. Miles agreed. Back in the room, I closed the door. Please tell me what the problem is, I said to Dr. Shen. His vital organs are shot, he explained. I don't think I can help him. It might be too late. I stared at him. You don't know who this man is, I said to him as tears filled my eyes. He, of course, like the world, understood who Miles was as a performer, but the shell of a man who had shown up in his office was irrefutably on his way out of here. Please, whatever you can do. It is important that we try to help him, I pleaded. He cannot believe that we've given up on him. The doctor stared at the floor for a long moment and then returned his gaze to me. All right, he said, exhaling. But he will have to do everything I tell him to do. I assured him that I would see to it. In a cab headed back uptown, I shared with Miles what Dr. Shen had requested. With fear in his eyes, he nodded yes. Thus began the road back for Miles. The doctor had sent me home with a bushel of herbs, a bag so enormous we'd hardly been able to get it into the back of the taxi. His instructions to me were precise. Put a portion of it into a massive pot, boil it down for several hours, and have Miles drink 8 ounces of the liquid every day. He also gave me a container of concentrated clear gel, and frankly, I don't know what it was. Some kind of Chinese remedy. Every morning, Miles was to stir a spoonful of it into whatever he was eating, which, because I was preparing his meals, became whole foods, vegetables only. Rich with nutrients above all, he would consume no drugs or alcohol of any kind during the course of treatment. On Sundays, Dr. Shen had told me we were to return to his office so he could monitor Miles's progress and load us down with more herbs. Praise God that by the time Miles had called on me for help, he was so sick that he'd already given up cocaine, cold turkey. In our earlier years together, I had watched him wean himself a couple of times. His process was remarkable to me. He'd first let go of all the hard drugs and liquor, then marijuana, then cigarettes, then even beer. He'd close himself off in his room and stay in his bed for weeks, sweating and moaning while his system revolted. In the end, he'd be sitting at the table with a cup of water, looking like he had never been hooked at all. When it came to Dr. Shen's prescription, Miles was a willing student. He followed the orders to the letter, and as far as I was concerned, he did not have a choice. I was not going to let this man die. I counted it a miracle that when even made it to the 3rd and 4th appointments. Given Dr. Shen's assessment during visit 1, in addition to the herbs, the doctor added in an ancient herbal tea for Miles to drink twice daily to aid in restoring his vital organs. Miles did so dutifully. On a couple of Sundays, when Miles's body was riddled with pain, I nonetheless dragged him into that office, wheeling him in even in a wheelchair. Week by week, his condition slowly improved. Even Dr. Chen, upon examining him, seemed surprised at the pace of his recovery. In the year after Miles and I got back together, he proposed marriage to me twice more in his own way. So when are we going to do this thing? He asked, grinning. I demurred. I felt beyond certain of my love for him, yet I thought our relationship was fine as it was. In my mind, we didn't need to formalize the feelings that had been proved. But the better Miles got to feeling, the louder his chorus of insistence became. During the holidays, around my birthday in 1979, he again asked me to marry him. This time, probably because he had worn me down, I said yes. His eyes filled with tears as he embraced me. I'm going to try this one more time, he said, laughing. I was to be the third Mrs. Miles Davis. I was also to be the last. Miles sealed the deal soon after. When I arrived at his place one evening, he met me at the door. I got you an emerald, he said, beaming. What do you mean you got me an emerald? I asked, wondering why he chose a green stone. Go down to the jeweler tomorrow and see if you like it, he said, scribbling down the address on a piece of paper and handing it to me. The next morning at the shop, the man at the counter pried open a black velvet box to reveal a sparkling solitaire. He slid it onto my finger and I gasped. Oh, I guess he must have meant an emerald cut, I said, laughing. Turns out Miles had asked a woman in his manager's office what ring should he choose, and she told him get her an emerald cut. Miles, who didn't know a marquise from a princess from a cushion cut, grabbed onto the word understood emerald. Following our engagement, I got involved with various film projects, so we took our time setting a wedding date. Meanwhile, Miles would sometimes teasingly say to me, You're a big old movie star now. What do you want to do with an old man like me? That question had less to do with my desires and more to do with his physical state. Dr. Shin had pulled him back from death's cliff's edge, no doubt. But he still was on that cliff. Miles knew he wasn't long for this world. And as grateful as he was that I would commit to him, he couldn't quite understand it. Others echoed his dubiousness. Why are you marrying him? Someone asked me. Can't you see he's dying? But I had no reservations. I was not focused on his exterior, his frame. From the beginning, I'd loved Miles for his innards, for the man that he was, even at his worst and vulnerable. And I knew that if I could just get him standing up straight again, if I could get him back on the stage and reconnected with his purpose, this man wasn't going anyplace. Oh, wow, guys. That was chapter 18. What a riveting chapter. So we covered her doing Roots. And if you are of a certain age, I'm pretty sure you probably have seen Roots. And some of that invoked in me or has me thinking about where she is speaking about how African Americans, how can be kind of hard for us to kind of trace where we come from. I personally love history, and I personally have been the person, I feel like, in my family where I'm trying to trace back my own family, because it's like it is hard to go back. I'm sorry, because I didn't have my grandmother growing up. My mom lost her mother at a young age. And then I'm trying to think, I know my mom passed before I had kids, so my children never got to meet my mom. And I found out I know who my grandmother was. So I of course have my mom, and then I knew who her mom was, or we had a picture of her. And during my digging, I found out through my uncle, I think, I found out who my great grandmother was. And so I have kind of been trying to go back in our history myself, because I want to give that gift to my family, especially my girls, because I do want them to know where they come from. I just find that fascinating. I find it important. And so that's what this particular chapter has brought up in me. Just trying to figure out, where do we come from? Where it is. And I just know the struggle. It is hard going back so far, because sometimes there are no records, because as it was stated, like if they were slaves or if they were, you know, enslaved, I may not get a name or a place or, you know, church records or anything like that. It's really been a struggle. I think the one thing that I may have to do, which I have not done, is probably the little DNA testing type of thing, because like I said, just trying to do something on my own, sleuthing, y'all. But yes, that was amazing. And then her reconnecting with Miles, y'all. I feel like this when it comes to love. I think when you love someone, you're gonna always love that someone. It's just, once the love has been created in you, it's always gonna stay. That's all I have to say about that. Thank you guys for coming and listening to Storytime with Lynn. This was so interesting. And don't forget, you know, yep, we're going to have Dollar Tree Bingo again really soon. And I think that's it. So I will see you guys in the next video. Remember, if you like this, please hit that like. And if you are not subscribed already, please subscribe to the channel. I definitely would love to have you here in the Lynn N Things family. Till our next video, guys.